Hi, I'm Pluto, and this is a tutorial about how to use array mesh in ZBrush. It's honestly not as complicated as it looks, and do not be intimidated. You are way more capable than you think, and you got what it takes to try new things. To get started, you're gonna go down, you're gonna click array mesh. Make sure the button glows orange, just like that. And then you can make whatever object you created repeat as many times as you'd like. For now, I'm just gonna keep it low, that's good. I'll keep it at 8. Most of the movement of array meshes are gonna go to your X, Y, or Z amount. This basically determines where your objects will go around the pivot or just around in general, whether that's up, down, around, or just surrounding the pivot, depending on what direction you make it facing. As you can see, when I change the amount of X, I change how far apart all of these versions of my original object are. And honestly, these objects are not there forever. They're kind of invisible test objects. But yeah, this is basically how that would look for just the X amount. And the further I do it, the further my shape will just like that go out. To keep your array mesh, you would have to click make mesh at the bottom, and that's how I keep this weird little shape I have. And the more versions of my object I add in the repeat section, the more it will change the way it looks and how many times that object will repeat in the sequence or order, I guess, which will inevitably change how your amounts will look when you bring them up or down. And now I'm just going to teach you how rotating works. So rotating is just how where the object goes around the pivot. Now you can change the position of the pivot, which I'll teach you later, but right now you can just use it to change the shape. In my example, I'm using it to fan out my existing shape and make it look more round instead of chopped up like before. Let's say I want to officially make this into a array mesh type of thing, just like you see me doing. In order to do that and change your gizmo into a pivot, you would have to click Y and then use that yellow circle. As you move the circle away from your shape or to your shape or near your shape, it'll change where it ends up. So I'm using it as a way to since it's in the middle, the shapes will naturally wrap around the pivot. So in order to not get what I just got, you have to move the pivot away from the shape. Especially if you want it to circle around the pivot, you have to move it away from the shape, usually somewhere in between it, especially if you want that specific 360 type of circle thing. And the way I do this is I put it in the middle, just like that, and I get this donut shape. If you wouldn't like a donut like this or a 360 shape in general, I'd recommend moving the pivot either closer or changing your X and Y positions to change the way the shapes interact with the pivot. Overall, with array mesh, it's a lot of playing around and trying to see what works. As I said, if you do just want a 360, type in 360 to the X position or Y position, depending on where you want it to go around, and that will highly impact how it looks in the end. But if you want anything else, just play around with it. Even if you want a 360, I definitely recommend playing around with the X and Y position, or even the Z position, which is up and down, to allow you to see what works and see what you'll get. With this weird cone shape I have going on that I just created out of nowhere, yeah, I didn't like it, but it was pretty cool, and that would only happen if you played around and to see what you'd get. The reason why my crown collar ended up the way it did was because I played around and got something different than what the tutorial was showing me. So me, as your tutorial now, recommend you do that as well. Because I didn't like any of these outcomes, I decided to just go back to the original circle shape I had. You're going to see as I play around with the circles and the pivot to see the ways, as well as the positions, to see the different ways it'll look. I ended up going with the circle again because I really liked how it looked, and I wanted to see how I could stretch it and see where it would go. And yeah, As I said, there's a lot of playing around in this process, whether that's what I'm doing here with the rotate or the offset or even the scale of your object. A lot of playing around will get to where you want. After getting my circle donut back, I turned up the repeater and changed a bit more things, and I got this snake looking donut. And I really liked how the snake donut looked, so I decided to keep it. And again, in order to do that, you have to click make mesh to keep it into its shape, and then it'll make it an object. And what I'm doing here is I'm playing around the end. I'm showing different ways you can like smooth out the edges, because I know sometimes when you use array mesh like I did when I made the collar, was that it was really crunchy and weird. By using dynamic subdiv and crease, turning down crease and turning back on dynamic subdiv and turning on smoothness will allow you to draw on it so it can smooth out some of the really harsh edges. But the point that I really liked about the snake looking donut is that it was weird and crunchy, and so I didn't do a lot of the smoothing. I just used it as an example and showed you where they were. And that's all for this video. I hope you guys all had an amazing time watching me work on this, and I hope you guys try your best to make your own array meshes. As I said, it's not as hard as you thought, right?
If it were up to me, I'd turn you into a stone, turn the lights down low for effect, and I'd steal your cigarettes, and I'd be soft